What if I told you there is a psalm in the Hebrew Bible that was deliberately written in reverse, and that for centuries a small circle of scholars and kabbalists guarded the method of reading it because they understood it contained the power to reverse curses, to undo spiritual damage, to take every negative decree spoken over your life and send it back to the void from which it came? I need you to hear me carefully right now. This is not something I share lightly. I have studied Torah for over 30 years. I have sat with rabbis in Jerusalem who would not allow certain teachings to be recorded. And when I first learned what I am about to share with you today, I did not sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, but because I finally understood why certain people remain trapped in cycles of poverty, sickness, broken relationships, and blocked blessings. No matter how hard they pray, no matter how many good deeds they perform, no matter how desperately they cry out to God, the answer was hidden inside a psalm that most people read forward, without ever realizing it was engineered by King David himself to be read in a very specific reverse pattern. And when you read it the way it was designed to be read, something shifts in the spiritual realm that I can only describe as a divine reset. Everything that has been working against you begins to unravel. I'm going to show you exactly which psalm this is, why it was written backwards, how the ancient scholars understood its hidden structure, and most importantly, I'm going to give you the exact step-by-step method to activate its power in your own life, starting tonight. But I need you to stay with me until the very end, because the method itself, the actual practice, comes with specific conditions that most people get wrong. And getting it wrong can actually make things worse. Stay with me. This could be the most important teaching you encounter this year. Let me begin with a question that might disturb you. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to be cursed? And I do not mean that word loosely. I mean genuinely spiritually blocked. You know the type of person I am talking about. Maybe you are that person. Everything you touch seems to fall apart. You get the job and then lose it within months. You find the relationship and it crumbles. Money comes in and immediately flows out, as if your pockets have holes in them. The prophet Haggai actually described this exact condition in chapter 1 at verse 6. He said, "You earn wages only to put them in a bag with holes." That is not a metaphor for bad financial planning. That is a description of a spiritual condition where blessing cannot be retained because something unseen is draining it away. Before I continue, let me share something with you. Everything I teach in these videos comes from a collection of 20 ancient psalms that my family has studied for generations, for money, protection, and destiny. I've put all of them together in one place, with the exact instructions on how to read each one, when to read them, and how many times. It's called The Hidden Rules of Jewish Wealth. The link is in the description below. Now let me tell you what happens next. The rabbis of the Talmud had a term for this. They called it a kelalah, a curse. And they distinguished between curses that come from external sources, from enemies, from the evil eye, from spoken words of jealousy, and curses that are self-generated through our own spiritual misalignment. But here is what most people do not understand. A curse is not just a negative wish someone throws at you. In the Kabbalistic tradition, a curse is a distortion in the flow of divine energy. Think of it this way. God's blessing flows downward like water through channels. When those channels are clean and open, blessing reaches you. When those channels become twisted, blocked, or reversed, the same energy that was meant to bless you begins to work against you. The same force that should have brought prosperity brings poverty. The same force that should have brought love brings isolation. It is not that God has abandoned you. It is that the channels through which His goodness flows to you have been corrupted. And this is precisely where Psalm 27 comes into the picture, but not in the way you have heard it taught before. Most people know Psalm 27. they read the opening line, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" And they feel comforted. It is a beautiful psalm. But what almost nobody knows is that Psalm 27 is one of the acrostic psalms, and meaning its structure follows the Hebrew alphabet. Each verse begins with a successive letter of the alphabet, Alf, then Bet, then Gimel, and so on. This is not just a poetic device. In Jewish mysticism, the Hebrew alphabet is not merely a set of letters. Each letter is a vessel of divine energy. The alphabet, in its proper order, represents the flow of creation from beginning to end, from the first act of divine will to its final manifestation in the physical world. When the letters flow in order, creation flows in order, blessing flows in order, life flows in order. But here is the extraordinary thing about Psalm 27 that the Kabbalists noticed and that has been preserved in certain manuscripts that most people have never seen. The psalm contains a deliberate disruption in the alphabetical sequence. Specifically, the letter Kuf, which corresponds to the word Kadusha, holiness, appears out of its expected position, and one verse, the 14th verse, which begins with the letter Kuf, delivers the most powerful instruction in the entire psalm. It says, El Hashem Azak al Hashem, hope in the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage and hope in the Lord. Notice, it says hope in the Lord twice. The verse begins and ends with the same phrase. It loops back on itself. It is in its very structure a reversal. The ancient scholars saw this and understood that David had embedded within this psalm a mechanism for reversal, for taking the energy of a curse and routing it backwards through the divine letters until it returned to its source and dissolved. If what I'm sharing today is touching your spirit, then you need the complete guide. 20 psalms, each one decoded with the exact ritual for money, protection, and breaking curses. My family guarded this for generations. I wasn't supposed to share it, but you need it now. The Hidden Rules of Jewish Wealth. The link is right below this video. Go get it before we continue. Let me tell you a story that will make this real for you. There was a merchant in the 16th century Saft, the city in northern Israel, where the great Kabbalists lived and studied. This merchant was a righteous man, a man who gave charity generously, who observed Shabbat meticulously, who treated his workers with fairness. Yet for 7 years, everything he touched turned to ash. His ships were lost at sea. His investments crumbled. His own brother cheated him out of an inheritance. He went to rabbi after rabbi seeking answers, and each one told him to pray harder, give more charity, examine his deeds. He did all of this. Nothing changed. Finally, he traveled to Sa and managed to gain an audience with Rabbi Moshe Cordovo, one of the greatest Kabbalists who ever lived, the author of the Pardes Ramonim. Rabbi Cordovo listened to the merchant's story in silence. When the merchant finished, Rabbi Cordovo did not tell him to pray harder. He did not tell him to give more charity. Instead, he asked the merchant a strange question. He said, "Tell me, has anyone in your family ever been publicly shamed or cursed by a person of authority?" The merchant thought for a long time and then remembered something his mother had once told him. His grandfather decades earlier had been cursed by a community leader after a bitter dispute over land. The leader had stood in the marketplace and declared that the family would never know lasting prosperity. The merchant had always dismissed this as an old story, meaningless words from a bitter man. But Rabbi Cordovo shook his head and said, "Words spoken with authority and rage create channels in the spiritual world. They carve grooves through which negative energy flows, and those grooves can persist for generations until they are deliberately reversed." Then Rabbi Cordovo taught the merchant the practice I am about to teach you. He instructed him to read Psalm 27 in a specific reverse pattern for 40 days. And he told him that by the end of those 40 days, the spiritual grooves carved by his grandfather's curse would be smoothed out, the channels would be restored, and blessing would flow again. The merchant followed the instructions precisely. Within 3 months of completing the 40-day practice, his fortunes reversed so dramatically that he became one of the wealthiest men in the region. He later endowed a synagogue in Saif that, according to some accounts, still stands today. But here is where I need you to pay extremely close attention, because this is the part that most people get wrong. And this is the part that separates those who experience a genuine spiritual breakthrough from those who just read words on a page and wonder why nothing happened. The practice is not simply reading Psalm 27 from the last verse to the first. That is what people assume when they hear the phrase reading a psalm backwards. And that assumption has led to confusion and even harm. The actual method taught by the Kabbalists is far more precise and far more powerful. You read the psalm forward in its entirety as it is written, but at the end of each verse, you immediately recite the last verse of the psalm, verse 14, Hashemak Hashem, hope in the Lord. I be strong, and let your heart take courage and hope in the Lord. You read verse 1, then verse 14, verse 2, then verse 14, verse 3, then verse 14, all the way through. What you are doing is creating a reverse loop within the psalm itself. Each verse moves forward through the alphabet, through the sequence of creation, but then you pull it back to that final verse, the verse that loops back on itself, the verse of reversal. You are essentially threading each line of the psalm through a needle of reversal. You are pulling every declaration, every cry, every statement of faith through the mechanism that David built into the psalm's conclusion. This is not something I invented. This is not something I found on the internet. This method is recorded in the writings of the Kabbalists of Safed and was preserved in certain prayer books used by Sephardic communities for centuries. And the reason it was not widely published is not because it is forbidden. It is because the scholars feared that people would do it carelessly, without proper intention. And the practice requires kavanah, focused spiritual intention, to work. Let me tell you what kavanah means in this context, because this is the second mistake people make. They think kavanah means concentration, like focusing really hard on the words. That is part of it, but that is not the core of it. Kavanah, in its deepest sense, means alignment of will. It means that when you read these words, your entire being, your mind, your heart, your soul, is aligned with a single intention. And the intention for this practice is very specific. You must hold in your mind the image of a river flowing in the wrong direction. Picture a river that has been diverted, that is flowing uphill against nature, against the way God designed it to flow. That is what a curse does to your life. It reverses the natural flow of blessing. And as you read each verse, followed by verse 14, you are visualizing that river being corrected, being turned back to its natural course, flowing downhill again, flowing toward you, carrying with it everything that was meant to reach you but was blocked or diverted. This visualization is not optional. The Zohar, the central text of Jewish mysticism, teaches in Parashat Pinchas that prayer without kavanah is like a body without a soul. It has form but no life. The words of the psalm are the body. Your focused intention is the soul that animates them. And there is something else you need to know. Something that I have hesitated to share publicly before, but that I feel compelled to share today because too many of you are suffering unnecessarily. The Talmud in Tractate Brachot, page 55, side A, teaches that a curse spoken by a Torah scholar, even if it is conditional, can take effect. This passage has been debated for centuries, but the implication is clear. Words have power. And not just the words of scholars, the words of parents, the words of authority figures, The words spoken over you in moments of anger, in moments of jealousy, in moments of spite. How many of you had a parent who said in frustration, "You will never amount to anything"? How many of you had a teacher, a boss, a spouse who declared over you, "You will always be broke, you will always be alone, you will never succeed"? In the spiritual framework of Torah, those words do not just disappear into the air. They create realities. They carve grooves. And unless those grooves are deliberately reversed, they continue to channel negative energy into your life year after year, decade after decade, even generation after generation. This is not superstition. This is the mechanics of the spiritual world as described by the greatest minds in Jewish history. Let me give you another story, and this one is from the Talmud itself. In Tractate Makot, the sages tell of Rabbi Akiva and his colleagues who were walking near the ruins of the temple in Jerusalem. They saw a fox emerging from the place where the Holy of Holies had once stood. The other rabbis wept. Rabbi Akiva laughed. And they asked him, "Why do you laugh?" He said, "The prophet Zechariah foretold that the streets of Jerusalem would be desolate. The prophet also foretold that those same streets would one day be filled with old men and women and children playing. Now that I have seen the first prophecy fulfilled with my own eyes, I am certain the second prophecy will also be fulfilled." What Rabbi Akiva did in that moment was a reversal. He took the image of destruction, the fox in the Holy of Holies, which represented the ultimate curse on the Jewish people, and he reversed its energy. He used the very evidence of the curse as proof that the blessing was coming. He looked at the curse and saw through it to the blessing on the other side. This is exactly what you do when you practice the Psalm 27 method. You take every curse, every negative word, every blocked channel in your life, and you thread it through the reversal mechanism that David built into the psalm. You look at the evidence of the curse in your life, and you declare through the words of the psalm that the blessing is coming, that the channels are being restored, that the river is flowing in the right direction again. I want you to understand that this is not a magic trick. It is a labor of the heart. It is the restoration of the divine order in your personal world. When we talk about death, when we talk about lack, we are often talking about a spiritual vacuum, a vacuum that was created by a spoken word or a wrongful action. And you cannot fill a spiritual vacuum with physical effort alone. You can work 3 jobs, you can save every penny, but if the bag has holes, as Haggai said, the effort is wasted. You must first sew up the holes. You must first smooth out the grooves. Only then can the vessel hold the blessing. Think of the Hebrew word for money, kesef. Its root comes from a word meaning longing or desire. Money in its pure form is meant to be a tool for fulfilling the divine desire for goodness in the world. When it is blocked, it is because that desire has been hijacked by a lower energy. By reading the psalm in this loop, you are reclaiming that energy. You are saying to the universe, "I am no longer a victim of the words spoken against me. I am a partner in the creation that flows from Aleph to Tav. I am realigning my house, my table, and my wallet with the light that David called his salvation." In the next part, I will reveal the specific physical requirements, the washing, the timing, and the silence, that ensure this practice takes root in the physical world. This is where most people fail, because they treat the spiritual as something separate from the physical. But in the Jewish tradition, the two are one. Stay with me. Here is the complete practice, step by step. And I want you to write this down or come back to this part of the video later. This is the practical layer, where the wisdom of the mind meets the action of the body. In the Jewish tradition, a thought that does not lead to action is like a seed that is never planted. To change your financial reality, to break the cycle of debt and bags with holes, you must bring the spiritual reversal into the physical realm. First, choose a time. The ideal time is after sunset, during the first hour of night. The Kabbalists teach that the first hour after sunset is when the spiritual channels are most receptive to correction. This is the time of transition, where the harsh judgment of the day begins to soften into the mercy of the night. If you cannot do it at night, do it in the early morning before sunrise. These are the two windows of maximum spiritual receptivity. Second, wash your hands. And this is not about hygiene. This is a spiritual act of purification, what we call netilat yadayim. Pour water over each hand 3 times, alternating right and left, just as you would upon waking in the morning. This creates a barrier between you and any spiritual impurity that might interfere with the practice. In the language of the Zohar, you are removing the external forces that cling to the fingertips, the parts of us that touch the material world and its anxieties. Third, sit in a quiet place. You do not need a synagogue. You do not need a prayer shawl. You need quiet and you need privacy. The Kabbalists were emphatic about this. This practice should be done alone. Why? Because the energy of reversal is delicate. When you are trying to untie a knot in a thin silk thread, you do not want someone jolting your elbow. You are untying the knots in your own destiny. Fourth, before you begin reading, state your intention out loud. Speech is the bridge between the hidden world of thought and the revealed world of matter. Say these words or something very close to them. I am reading this psalm to reverse every curse, every negative word, every spiritual blockage that has been placed upon me, my family, and my livelihood, whether in this generation or in previous generations. I acknowledge that my struggle is not merely physical, but spiritual, and I ask the Creator to restore the channels of blessing to their proper flow, that I may have the means to live in dignity and to give tzedakah to others. Fifth, read Psalm 27 in its entirety following the method I described. Read verse 1, then immediately read verse 14. Read verse 2, then immediately read verse 14. Continue this pattern through all 14 verses. When you reach verse 14 in the natural sequence, read it twice. This creates the double seal. You are looping the energy of hope in the Lord back into every single line of your life story. If verse 3 talks about an army encamping against you, verse 14 reverses that fear into strength. If verse 9 talks about God hiding his face, verse 14 reverses the distance into a divine embrace. Sixth, after completing the reading, sit in silence for at least 2 minutes. Do not immediately get up. Do not check your phone. Do not let the digital world rush back in. Sit and allow the words to settle into your soul. Visualize the river flowing correctly. Feel the shift. Imagine your bank account, your home, your pantry, not as empty spaces, but as vessels being filled with a golden, steady light. Seventh, repeat this practice for 40 consecutive days. Not 39, not 41, 40. The number 40 in Torah represents transformation. The flood lasted 40 days to purify the earth. Moses spent 40 days on Sinai to receive the law. The Israelites wandered 40 years to become a new nation. 40 is the number of complete spiritual metamorphosis, the time it takes for an embryo to take form. If you miss a day, you must start over from day 1. This is not arbitrary. The Kabbalists taught that the spiritual correction builds cumulatively, like charging a battery. A break in the chain disrupts the accumulation. I know that sounds strict, but this is how it works. We are talking about reversing years, perhaps decades, of negative momentum. You cannot stop a moving train by touching it once. You must apply steady, consistent pressure. If it were easy, everyone would do it, and everyone would have already broken free from their curses. But you are here because you are ready for the work. And if you believe that this seems like a lot of effort, let me ask you something. How many years have you been struggling? How many years have you been praying without seeing results? How many nights have you lain awake wondering why God seems silent? Why the blessings seem to flow to everyone around you, but never to you? 40 days is nothing compared to the years you have already spent trapped. 40 days of focused, intentional spiritual work can undo decades of accumulated spiritual damage. I have seen it happen. I have seen people who are drowning in debt suddenly receive unexpected opportunities. A debt forgiven, a property sold, a promotion that seemed impossible. I have seen people whose relationships were shattered experience reconciliation that they had given up hoping for. I am not promising you a miracle in the sense of something for nothing. I am telling you that when you align yourself with the spiritual mechanics that God built into His creation, when you use the tools that David embedded in the Psalms, the result is as natural as the sun rising. The curse is not a permanent state. It is a temporary distortion. You are simply returning things to their original blessed design. But there is a final warning I must give you. A condition so critical that if ignored, all your effort will be in vain. It concerns the power of the mouth, the very instrument you are using to break the curse. If you use your mouth to build with the psalm and then use it to destroy in your daily life, you are at war with yourself. In the final part, I will explain the law of the silent tongue and how to ensure your environment supports your 40-day transformation. Stay with me, because the ending of this teaching is where the real power is sealed. There is one more thing I must tell you, and this is perhaps the most important thing of all. While you are in the 40 days, you must not speak negatively about anyone. Not a single negative word about another human being. The Kabbalists were absolutely clear about this. In the Hebrew tradition, this is called Lashon Hara, the evil tongue. If you are working to reverse curses while simultaneously creating new curses through your speech, you are pouring water into a bucket while drilling holes in the bottom. The practice becomes futile. Guard your tongue during those 40 days as if your life depends on it, because spiritually it does. The book of Proverbs 18:21 says it plainly. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. During your 40 days of reversal, let only life flow from your mouth. When you speak ill of another, when you judge their success or gossip about their failure, you are tightening the very knots you are trying to untie in your own life. You are reinforcing the spiritual grooves of negativity. Instead, try to practice Ayin Tova, the good eye. Look at the prosperity of others and bless it. By doing so, you are telling the spiritual realm that you are in alignment with abundance, not jealousy. This is the secret of the silent tongue. In the 18th century, the Vilna Gaon, one of the greatest scholars in history, wrote that for every moment a person guards their tongue from speaking inappropriately, they merit a hidden light that no angel or creature can imagine. This is the light that will fill the vacuum left by the curse you are reversing. I want to speak directly to you right now. Whoever you are, wherever you are watching this, I do not know your name. I do not know what you are going through, but I know this. You did not find this video by accident. In the Jewish tradition, we say that there are no coincidences, only hashbecha pratit, divine providence. You were guided here because something in the spiritual realm is ready to shift for you. The fact that you have watched this far tells me that your soul recognizes the truth of what I am saying, even if your mind is still wrestling with it. Trust your soul. It knows things your mind does not. It remembers the sound of these ancient vibrations. Tonight, before you go to sleep, wash your hands, sit quietly, and read Psalm 27 with the method I have described. Read each verse, followed by verse 14. State your intention. Visualize the river being corrected. Do this tonight, not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. Because every day you wait is another day the curse remains in effect. Every day you delay is another day the channels remain blocked. You have the tool now. You have the knowledge. What you do with it is between you and the Creator. I want to leave you with a blessing. May the one who spoke and the world came into being speak blessing over your life and reverse every curse that has ever been uttered against you. May He restore the channels of abundance, health, love, and peace to their proper flow. May you see with your own eyes the fulfillment of the words of David in Psalm 27:13. I believe I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Ani ma'amin. I believe. May the Lord bless you and protect you. Yevrechecha Hashem veishmerecha. May the Lord shine His face upon you and be gracious to you. Ya'er Hashem panav elecha veichuneka. May the Lord lift His face toward you and grant you peace. Yisa Hashem panav elecha veyasem lecha shalom. If this teaching has touched something deep inside you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. There is someone in your life right now, you already know who it is, who is struggling under the weight of a curse they do not even know how to name. Send them this video. You might be the messenger God is using to set them free. And if you want to continue receiving these teachings every week, teachings drawn from the deepest wells of Torah wisdom, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss what might be the one teaching that changes everything for you. Go to the link in the description to get the hidden rules of Jewish wealth and start your journey of restoration today. I will see you in the next one. Go in peace. Go in blessing.